Hello and welcome to the CSU podcast. I'm going to be your host for today. The topic is the Delphi Murders, Abigail Williams and Liberty German. The story of two young girls. I just want to begin this by saying this is one of those few cases that will put chills down your spine. It genuinely will. I read about this last year and it's stuck with me since then, and every few days I Google if there's been any updates on the case, and unfortunately there hasn't been, so I'm going to jump straight into it. So it was an unusually warm day in Delphi, Indiana. So February 13th, 2017. It was a Monday and it was a day off. So it was a snow day, or an unofficial snow day, and the schools were off and kids were free, and two girls, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German, also known as Libby, best friends, had decided that they were going to visit the Delphi historic trails that day. So they decided with Kelsey, who is Liberty's sister, that she would drop them off at the Delphi historic trails, and they were dropped off at the unofficial parking spot, or the parking area. And they were dropped off around 1:38 p.m. Around 2:07, a picture of Abby is uploaded onto Snapchat, and this has been done on Liberty German's account. Now at around 3:11, Derek German, who is Liberty German's father, calls and messages, and there's no response from the girls. So obviously, as any parent would, he got out of his car and he started calling for the girls, and he was looking at trails and looking at different areas, and he couldn't find the girls. He didn't see them walking anywhere, and anyone walking, he would stop them and ask them if they'd seen anyone walking up on the trails above, or on the infamous, asking them if they had been walking on the infamous bridge, which is known as the Manon High Bridge. So it's a huge bridge. It's around 70 feet high with huge gaps, and it's very rickety, and it was an abandoned railway bridge basically. Now at this point, he's frantic. There's been no response, and I think nothing horrible passed his mind. I think most of the family thought that, the girls had probably fallen. Now, if you keep in mind, this is a town of around 3,000 people in Delphi. So it's a very close-knit town. The last thing you think is going to happen to these girls is, one of them fell, one of them got hurt. I don't think anyone realised at the time what was going to happen and what they'd find. At around 5:30 p.m, the police are involved. So huge scale search is called, and this consists of the Carroll County Sheriff, consists of the firefighters, it consists of volunteers, and this search continues in the area for around up until 12 a.m. that night. The official search was called off at 12 a.m. because it was dark and there was a risk to the volunteers, there was a risk to police officer lives, and it was dark and they wouldn't be able to find anything anyway. However, it's important to note that the unofficial search volunteers had still continued through the night, and the police had decided that they would come back the next morning with the minute the sun rose, and they'd be out searching again. On February 14th, the next day, at around noon, the bodies of two girls are found, a quarter of a mile from the Manon High Bridge, near Deer Creek. I imagine this must have been such a horrifying time for the family and for the residents of Delphi. Two girls out enjoying a day of fun, and now a homicide investigation. What monster did this? The search is on. After a few days of investigation, Delphi police reveal that Liberty German had the wherewithal to capture video and audio of what is believed to be the suspect in their case. So just stop for a moment. This girl had the presence of mind at the time to say, something isn't right, take a picture of this person, he's freaking us out. So it was believed that when the two girls were on the edge around the end of the Manon High Ridge, they realised that a man had been following them. So Liberty German decided to take either a short video of and upload it to Snapchat. And it showed, and I'll have the video up for you over here so you can see it yourself, a chilling video of a man, head bent, hands in his pockets, and strolling behind them on that bridge. But that wasn't all Liberty German had captured. She had also captured audio of the man who was believed to have murdered them. The police released a snippet of the audio to the public, to the general public, and this is just in order for anyone to, jog memories. Did you know who this voice belongs to? So as you can tell, the perpetrator said, "Guys, down the hill." And we'll get into this later on, but the voice seems to be very authoritative. That just struck me the first time I heard that, was how almost casual but authoritative he sounded. Almost a person who knew how to deal with children or girls or kids of that, or teenagers almost of that age. And it's quite chilling if you think about it. Now we'll get back onto the tone of his voice and the language later on, but for now we're just going to continue. So in July 2017, a sketch is released by the Delphi police, and this is a sketch of an older man, and I'm going to have it over here for you guys to see. Now, it's an older man wearing a cap and everything. Now, you would think that everyone would be, searching for this person. 2 years later, the Delphi police release another sketch, a sketch of a younger man who is believed to be anywhere from the ages of 18 to 40. Now, I'm going to have that sketch over here as well. Now, if you look at the two and compare the two sketches, there is a world of difference between the two. And this is what irritates me about this case, or how the police work this case. Why did you release in the first 2 years? Why was a sketch of an older man released? When it is said to the general public 2 years later, discard that sketch. That's not the sketch we're going on anymore. It's the younger man sketch we're going on, and this is the man who we're looking for. Now, this man is considerably younger, so it just makes me wonder, did they get any tips or new tips that we don't know about? The general public is generally unaware of the workings of the police and what's going on and what's, propelling the investigation forward. So we do have a lot of criticism for them, sometimes unfairly, because we're not aware of what's going on inside. But that just struck me as weird, that a older man sketch was released, and then 2 years later it was said, no, just discard the idea of that sketch, this is the newer one. And it's also interesting is that Doug Carter said that, maybe this was later on in an interview stated that, maybe when we find the guy, he might be a mixture of the two. So just stick with one statement. It seems that the Delphi police are confused, and it is a confusing case, but they seem to be extremely confused about the suspect. If I were them, I would just, solidly, I would just say, this is a sketch you're supposed to focus on, and not that one. But there seems to be contradicting statements coming out from the police. And I think what's also pertinent to add is that the police had these two sketches made from witnesses of that area after the crime. So these two sketches, the one that was released before and the one that was released after, they were both in their possession. But for some reason or other, they decided to release one, and then 2 years later decided, this one would have been a better idea, and release that one. So they know what they're doing, I hope. Now, from the start, this case seemed to be, one of those cases that, it's a small town. The perpetrators of this gruesome crime were going to be found within a few days, within a few weeks, within almost months, but this turned into one of those murder mysteries that have to this day unsolved, unusually so. Also, former Carroll County prosecutor, now retired, Robert Ives, had some interesting statements on the Down the Hill podcast, which is a very interesting podcast. I'd advise everyone to go over and check it out, about how not very well known the bridge was, that area was in general, to outsiders. How the bridge was abandoned and it was run down. And he stated something interesting that I agree with, that he said that the perpetrator must have been someone local. So it must have been someone who either grew up in the Delphi area, someone who's living there currently, or someone who's coming back and forth, visiting, either has relatives there, or someone who has an attachment of some sort, a link to this place. Now, and if you go into the history of this bridge, as I stated before, is 70 feet high, huge gaps, and its trail is concealed. That's the most important part. So it's only very well known to locals of the area. So it wouldn't have been, no random person from outside coming over to Delphi would have known about this area, or it'd be highly unlikely that they did, and have been so familiar with this region. Now, if you think about it, this is an area where adults are scared to pass this bridge, and I don't think the parents of these two girls would have let them, go on that bridge if they'd known they'd be going on that bridge. As every parent, you have reservations and you're, thinking of the safety of your kids. So a 70-foot high bridge, that's the first thing that would terrify me out of my mind. Like, I'm scared, I'm terrified of heights. Now, he also stated that the crime scene was unusual. Now, this just stands out to me about this. The crime scene was unusual, and he stated that there were around 3 to 4 signatures at the crime scene. So signatures are some sort of modus operandi, something unusual or something that deliberately stands out in a crime scene. So of course, police would have, investigated all of this. Now it makes me wonder, is this a man who has killed before? Because he had to have been quiet, comfortable in the area, to have left a signature and to have left certain marks in the area. Now, a random person, I don't think, would have it in them to leave some sort of, mark behind of them. If it was someone who was just doing it one-off, this seemed to be a person with some sort of, it almost seems like if you're leaving a signature at the area, you're leaving some sort, you're almost proud of what you've done, and you want it to be associated with you. Police have been notoriously tight-lipped about this particular crime scene. It hasn't been said that if they've had DNA evidence or the method of murder, how the girls died. This is just it. The autopsy was sealed. The police are very, very tight-lipped or about what is revealed to the general public about this case. And this is probably to stop any false confessions and stuff, and I agree with that. But at the same time, it's been almost 4 years. I think it's time for a new approach to this case, and it's time to maybe release details about this case that, small details doesn't have to be extremely, relevant, but it might be relevant to someone out there, and someone might click in someone's mind about, say, the type of murder weapon used. Now, we don't even know if it was a gun or if it was some other sort of murder weapon, but the police have been shady about DNA evidence, and it had been said by the police themselves that the crime scene was compromised by searchers, and it's important to talk about this. Is there's something in forensics known as low cards principle. So it states that any two objects come into contact with each other, there is always going to be some transfer of DNA. Now, this is a person who is killing 2 girls. There is going to have to be considerable, I would say, in my opinion, DNA evidence left behind. So I'm sure Liberty German, who was much more capable probably of fighting back, generally structure-wise, I would say she might have put up a fight, and I wonder if there has been any DNA evidence, because if there is, genealogically, this can be a case that could be solved that way. But I think over here is that the police have, touched DNA and DNA like that, and I don't think they have one profile that they're able to, single out. I think they have a lot of profiles, and probably unknown profiles on the girls, so it's, I'd say the DNA evidence isn't as strong. I think this is a case that's probably going to be solved, say, unfortunately, and God forbid, if this person ever committed something like this again, or if this person ever, blabbed about what he did to someone else, or if a family member noticed something unusual about that day and decided to call in a tip. I don't think this is one of those cases that is going to be solved by DNA, but who knows? Probably, might be. This is just me talking. Susan Hendricks also, this is another important interview that I found quite significant, was that Susan Hendricks on HLN said on the Dr. Oz show that the more evidence had been recorded by Liberty German. So it wasn't just that small clip and that audio that was released to us. There's actually more audio, but law enforcement will only release what will help solve the crime. So there are, and has been confirmed, that there are other voices and videos on that phone, but in order to protect the family, they will not be released to the public, because it's sensitive and it will cause great distress to the family if released. And she'd also stated that Sergeant Kim Riley told her that one of the girls is slowly realising what might happen, and their final moments are either caught on video or on audio. And I think it's morbid curiosity where people want law enforcement to release everything about the case. But just imagine if this was your family. Would you want the last moments of your loved one's life to be, shown to the public? Especially such a gruesome ending. I don't think any of us would want that out there. Those are private moments, and unfortunately sad moments for the family. Now I'm just going to address rumours about this case that have been swirling ever since they've happened. So the first most infamous one have been the Dave Erskine text messages. So this is Abigail Williams, I think, step-uncle, and these were text messages that were between him and another person, and they kind of released some details that have not been privy to the public, so we don't have any method of clarifying whether they're true or not. But Abigail Williams and Liberty German's families have not denied them, so I'm just going to say they might be true. But there's just been some talk about posing of the girls, and how one of the girls had their head nearly decapitated. And it's just, I don't even like saying this because it's so horrifying, and the families must be absolutely traumatized by this, and hearing it brought up again and again must be horrible. So those might be true, we're not sure, but that's just a rumour that has been going on for a while. And another rumour is that it is one of the girls' family, and someone stated that Kelsey's family was, Liberty German's family was dysfunctional, and Kelsey, her sister, and her boyfriend might have had something to do with it, or their father had something to do with it. No, every family has their problems. No family is perfect. So I highly doubt it is someone they knew, because if they did, I don't think they'd be taking pictures. I think they were taking pictures because it was a strange person and they'd never seen him before. Or else they would have said on audio, oh, isn't that so-and-so, and what's he doing there, what's he following us? I think this was someone who they'd never seen before. So I think you can all discard that rumour, and I think the police have also investigated all these members of the family, and I think it would just be better if people would stop with the, useless accusations. So there isn't much to talk about, or much else to talk about in this case, because the police have only released so much information to us, so I don't think we can talk about the crime scene or anything like that in detail, because we don't know about it. We don't know much about it, and anything we know is rumours, so they haven't been verified. My theory about this is that it was I'd like to call it a planned crime of opportunity. So I think this is a person who knew that was a day off. He knew that area or that higher bridge was full of teenagers, risky teenagers walking that bridge, and he was there that day. I don't think he was there specifically for them, but I think he was just there that day with everything prepared to do something. but he had no victim in mind. I think it was just two people he saw, and he decided, you know what, I'll go and I'll do it. I don't think he had them planned. I don't think he had planned to meet them up, because the police had obviously investigated and looked at the phones, and obviously, there was a thorough investigation of all of these phones and every data dumps, everything, and I think they would have known if there had been some sort of meetup of sorts. And I also think that this was a local person or someone that frequents the Delphi area because of connections or links to that area. So say if someone has grandparents or parents living in that area. I'd also say that so the day was very convenient and the area and location was very convenient. So it was too convenient for an outsider, I believe. This had to be a person who knew everything, or a lot about the area, about how the school worked, and if there was off days. I also think he was frequenting that area and the Manon High Bridge for days. I don't think this was just he came by one day. I think he was actively maybe walking those trails every day looking for a victim, and it was just that fateful day that those two young innocent girls happened to cross in front of him, and he decided to take it, and he decided to take the opportunity, which is disgusting as it sounds, but I think that's what happened. Now I also think maybe this is a man who might have had a rough upbringing, family troubles, something similar, or someone that did not have a very, peaceful life, maybe a mother who was abusive, or a mother who was getting abused, or some sort of maybe there's some sort of psychological thing usually in this case, where family, nature, nurture plays a big part in what shapes a person's mind to do horrible things. So does this man have rage towards women maybe, or rage towards a particular type of women? Because it had been said that the Liberty Germans' murder was more brutal than that of Abigail Williams, although both murders were equally brutal, but it's just the manner of killing seemed to be more exaggerated and more brutal for one girl than it did for the other. And this is just rumours. I don't know if this is true, but from what I've seen from the Dave Erskine texts, that this is what seemed to be the case. Now, this is just rumours. I'm not sure. This is a lot of alleged information. None of this has been verified. I'd also like to say it almost seems like the police have their suspect maybe, but as they continuously keep saying that they're one piece away from solving this case. Now, this might just be overly optimistic on my part, but I think the way that the sketches changed, I think someone gave them some sort of tip, but I think their hands are tied because they can't get any evidence. And you have to think that you've got to remember that you can't mess up a case like this, because in the event that you do mess up something, or you take a shortcut, or you want to get justice, you're too over eager to get justice, this can play a big role in the trial later on. And a murderer can literally get off scot-free due to some little miserrors in investigation. So you've got to tread carefully. Now, I might be just optimistic on my part, but I think, now I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of have an inkling of some sort that maybe they've got someone in mind, or one or two people in mind, or one person for sure, but they've just got to wait for him to slip up, or wait for someone to come forward with some concrete evidence. The two girls are survived by loving family members, campaigning every day. Liberty German has a sister, Kelsey German, who actively is campaigning every single day for answers and for justice. And she's active. She's got a Twitter account, and she's podcasts, and she's quite regular. And then Mike and Patty German, who are Liberty German's grandparents. And then we also have Abigail Williams' mother, and she isn't as forefront as you'd say, because you've got to understand that Abigail Williams was her only child, and I think it's just absolutely horrifying. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for her to have to go through this, a 13-year-old girl, so loved and so protected, and then just have to come to this fate. And I think it would break any person's heart. And I think for the best of, even for the strongest of people, it is hard. It is hard to rehash it every day in interviews. I know people have said she doesn't do as much interviews, and I think you've got to understand that she has to relive this every day, and it was her only child. So I just hope we see justice soon, and if anyone has any tips or anything, I'll leave a link below. If you ever, if you've heard this voice, seen this face, anything helps. Even if you think it's insignificant, send it forward. It won't be wasting anyone's time at all.